And really, if they kind of do the, I guess, I don't know what to call it, the repositioning thing where they kind of run back and forth, all you really have to do is keep a raider out in front and just ensnare and use that demolisher just to pound on it. And really they're losing an advantage by trying to get better position in that fashion. So, especially because you're setting up all these wards, and a whole bunch of people like to take their time just to set up positioning. Generally, if you can set up your position faster than them, you've got the battle made because they'll still be repositioning. So, positioning is super important, and it's good to know when to position and how to position, and and when you should be positioning. Like in this case, when Axelev was fighting the battle at his expo, he kind of stalled enough to actually get 3 wards up. Only problem was his hero was kind of in the back, but he did have the summons and the extra units, and yes, I'm referring to spirit wards as summons. So those were kind of to his advantage, especially when keeping the expo up and alive. So those are things to consider when you actually have an advantage. Also, he had the Talisman of Evasion. That's another thing that kind of kept his expo alive, especially when his Tauren Chieftain was getting pretty low on HP, because that kind of saved him. If he didn't have it, it would have died, most likely. I don't know. There's always other things that can happen. Also, one thing to keep in mind is you can always use a retrain, a Tome of Retrain. If you have an expo up, that's probably the better time to use it. So, if they expect something like, I don't know, Healing Wave and Hex, and you go, what would be great right now, as opposed to Healing Wave, because I actually can purchase healing scrolls and such, is I can just go buy a Tome of Retrain and healing scroll, and switch up my abilities. Really throws them off. And then even with tiny things like that, like even on your Tauren Chieftain, switching from wave to stomp, it really throws people off because they're expecting one thing, and then they go, oh no, I have to reconsider this because there's different ways to position against different spells. Like against Shockwave, you really want to make sure that your units are as far away from the Tauren Chieftain as possible. You kind of want to make sure they're spread out and stuff. And against Stomp, you kind of want to do the same thing, but you're not so afraid of the Tauren Chieftain's position because Stomp really doesn't do damage. All it does is reduce your damage output and, stun a whole bunch of units and allow them to reposition. So you really have to consider these things. Like, you won't be repositioning as much. You'll just, try and avoid the Stomp as much as possible. But it's not as bad as, trying to avoid a Shockwave, which has so much more range and so much more damage to your army. So these are things to consider when playing with this strategy. Adapting is a very important thing to consider also because, if they do go with the bears and such, it's always good to get Stomp, just because you can actually run your Kodo Beasts in Devour, and then, if you stomped first and then ran your Kodo Beasts in, you're still pretty fine because you won't take much damage. And this way their Dryads will get out of position, and especially if you have the wards, then your wards will focus down the Dryads. So then all you really have to worry about is your couple Raiders and maybe the few bears that are left over, which you can hex and focus down with certain units. And, against Mass Talons, all you really have to do is maybe switch up the Stomp to, I don't know, a Shockwave. Sometimes Stomp can work really well against the Druids at the Talon. The only thing that's a problem is that when you're Cycloned and you hit the Stomp hotkey, he'll come down and Stomp. So if they Cyclone and kind of move, you're screwed. And then you waste a Stomp, and you really don't want to waste those because they're very important, especially with the low mana pool of the Tauren Chieftain. So generally, all you have to do is worry about what they're doing for your hero selection, or for your unit selection. And for your skill set selection, Shadow Hunter, you always want to get Hex, just because it's so useful early game and late game. The only reason you want to go wards early on is if you're doing, I don't know, maybe some different kind of creeping. I really don't know any reason you'd want to go wards or healing wave first. It really doesn't give you any kind of advantage. So, if you have any ideas on that one, just let me know. But I really don't see any purpose for getting any other spells early on. So, I guess I'll end the audio off here. I didn't really talk about the Blade Master much. I guess I could have. But I didn't really see him as being a main factor in that game, so I'm just going to ignore his existence and say that he runs like a fag because, I don't know. Is it just me, or does the Blade Master run like he has a pickle up his butt or something? So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something about Shadowhunter usage and such. So yeah, have a good day, guys. Peace out.